Carrie James is here, ready to be enlightened.
So funny.
Hello, everyone, and happy Thursday. It's not just any Thursday, it's the weekend of my birthday. I know you didn't come here to Atlanta Film Festival to hear me go on about myself, but I'm a Leo. So you know what? I'm going to do that because I've got the mic right now. I have it on Instagram too, so I forgot to turn the volume down. Anyway, I'm really excited about it being my birthday and everything. And you know what makes me even more excited is that today's interview, it's our first interview from the Creative Conference. And it's also with my very, 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 very good friend, Jeff Keating. So I am so excited to talk to Jeff tonight, talk to him as a colleague and talk to him as someone in this industry instead of just one of my best friend's husbands and a very good friend of mine. But before we talk to Jeff, we're going to tell you a little bit about what's going on with the Atlanta Film Festival. So it is official now. The Atlanta Film Festival is officially a virtual film festival and a drive-in festival. Not everyone can give you the drive-in aspect, but we can give you the drive-in aspect here with Atlanta Film Festival. So go online. You can find out, again, all of the information about the details of what's going on with the festival. And I'm really interested in the drive-in aspect. So that's really cool. So check out that and make sure that you're aware of what's going on. We are close. We're almost a month out, just over a month out from the festival. So be on top of that. Also, there's merchandise available now. Rolling out ATLFF merchandise. You can get the t-shirts. They are also available on the website. And members get 10% off. So another benefit of membership is those discounts. Everyone loves a discount. The submissions are still open, and we are now officially in the regular deadline. So no more hella early, no more early, and no more basic early bird. I don't know how many levels there are. I don't know if this is Jumanji, but we're just in the regular deadline right now. And my dog decided she wants to come in and be in on the interview too tonight. So the current classes we have, we've got Directing from the Heart by Jan Mullins. There were 2 scholarships available, but guess what? Folks jumped on that and they got those scholarships. So they're no longer available. Congratulations to those of you who got it. And for those of you who still want to take this class, it is really, really worth it. Jan is an excellent teacher, and you will definitely learn a great deal about directing. We also have Kathy Berardi's Short Films 101 is also now open for registration. So that's a little bit of our info. I'm going to try to kick my dog out of here because she's clicking. I think she wants to get. Apparently she wants to be petted right now, but that's not going to happen because we're now at the interview portion, and I can take off my glasses because I put eyeshadow on today and I did my eyebrows. So that's why I'm taking off this. So I'm so excited to talk to my friend Jeff. Jeff Keating has been doing so many things around town and has an awesome opportunity that's come up, a great film coming up that he's been working with. And I just want to get all of the details from Jeff. But Jeff, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Hello. Okay, so Jeff, you have so many things going on, and I don't even know where to start. Do we start with okay, first of all, how has your quarantine life been? I'll start there.
Well, the quarantine life has been, I guess everybody deals with it in different ways. We've been in our own little bubble. I think we've been lucky at our house because we have a pool in the backyard. So obviously with the summer, it's a great place for the kids to play and for us to have people over with good social distancing. We also bought our daughter a trampoline for her birthday. So it's bounce, swim, bounce, swim, bounce, swim. And so that's been great. So I think I've really just been blessed the fact that I had a job because I know a lot of people have been struggling, with either keeping work or dealing with work during COVID. So the fact that I was able to work during COVID has been a real blessing. And also, it just kind of tests the family dynamic. You're around the kids and the wife more often, which is good in some ways, bad in others. But we've been handling it real well. So we're doing all right.
It's been an interesting time because, our industry is one that is sporadic and unpredictable. It's very difficult to plan a life And it's, so many people in this industry don't have kids, and it's not, to besmirch anyone who doesn't have kids, because, I used to be one of those people too, right? But it adds like extra layers of complication to an already difficult career. So how have been some of the ways, and both you and your wife, Carrie, hello, are both in the industry in some kind of way. So how have you all been able to manage up until this point? And then how did, this quarantine kind of change how you came to doing the family stuff?
So, we've had different stages in our lives as far as work and other things. So there have been many times where I've just kind of had a 9-to-5 job. She's done teaching and acting and other things. So it was a little bit easier to balance in that sense, because it was kind of the regular routine. Kids would be in school for a portion of the day. We would be able to work during the day. And then, nights and weekends, you just try to be flexible with what you're trying to do. Once we got to COVID, it was very interesting. I was doing some business development for a company called Go Jeff Go that obviously had a lot of video production. A lot of that went on hold for a while, which meant a lot of the work I was doing with them went on hold. But then I got this deal with iHeart Radio to do this podcast. And it allowed me to do a lot of work from home. One of my co-writers, Jim Roberts, actually had a carriage house where I've been able to go to it. So the balance has been a little more challenging because the kids obviously are out of school, but also the flexibility of being able to work around the schedule has been nice as well. So, when you got a 5-year-old that's coming into your office, sometimes that's hard. But it's also nice if you need to be able to do activities with them or balance out when you work. I've been doing, to be honest, a lot of work at night. So, you do some in the day, play with the kids, and then at night you do some deep into the evening. And so that's been helpful.
And it helps when you can wear them out in the pool and on a trampoline. Just keep on bouncing, honey. Just keep on bouncing. Back in the pool. Bounce.
Exactly.
Bounce and take a little of this Benadryl. I'm just joking. I never did that to my child. I never, ever would ever say that a parent should do that, But it's definitely been interesting because, in this industry it's like, it's been a feast or famine situation. It's normally feast or famine where you're working constantly and on set or whatever for 12 hours a day or more, and then are completely exhausted when you get home. And now it's like everyone, I think, in this industry was like, oh, if I just had more time. And now we've all had a whole lot of time, and will continue to have a lot of time for a few more months even, I could see, But you also got a great deal with iHeart Media. And how did that come to play? How did that become a thing?
So we'll go back one project, actually two. I was lucky and blessed and got a deal with Universal Studios about 2 years ago in Will Packard Productions on one of my scripts. And once that hit, the kind of theory in Hollywood is as soon as a deal goes through, you try to get your next deal immediately. And so literally within a couple of months, I was able to get some development funds for a feature film called Follow Me, based on a critically acclaimed short story of the same name. And I partnered with another filmmaker here in town, Dan Bush, who did The Signal that sold at Sundance. He's done a couple other films, The Vault. Most recently, he had a film at Austin Film Festival called Dark Red. So I partnered with Dan and the writer of the short story, Paul Greiner, to co-write this script and to attach Dan to direct. So obviously, we became even closer during that process, which was great. And Dan had a dear friend, one of his best friends, Connell, who's the president. And so he said at some point, he'd been following Fight Night for years. And he's like, I think Dan really was the one that was pushing the podcast world on me. He'd already stuck his toe in it, was starting to develop stuff. And he's like, I think Fight Night would make a great podcast. Why don't we pitch it to my buddy Connell? And we did, and Connell loved it, has been very supportive. And so it was through Dan and his relationship that we got that deal.
Okay. So we are going to talk about Fight Night. I really, it's a great story. It's a great Atlanta story. And I really want to get into that, but I do want to talk a little bit about the podcast movement, so to speak. You know, I was talking to somebody, they're like, it's like the Wild West right now. You know what I mean? It's just kind of, you know, so talk about, because you talked to me too, you know, you guys need to do a podcast, which I've got my idea now. No, but, you know, how does one really make a name for themselves? You were fortunate to kind of have a deal where it kind of came to you, but how do you separate yourself? How do you know, just talk about how you're navigating through this process.
Yeah, and mine's a little bit, I would have to say, a lot of people obviously either are starting doing their own podcast, or they're trying to navigate their way into a company like iHeart or Spotify or Wondery or some of these other companies. So I'm a very unusual, and plus I got lucky, as we talked about, Karen, where I had a deal at a very high level with Universal that had some legs to it. So getting in when you don't have something like that, I can't speak to as much. But process-wise, let me say this. It's a lot harder than I thought it would be. I mean, it's a ton of work because you're dealing with just audio, and you know, you and I are so used to watching movies and watching TV shows. So for the longest time, I was obviously listening to other podcasts to see how they were doing it at the highest level. But I also started to put on TV shows and movies and stop watching it, but just listening with my headset, and you'd be amazed at the awesome sounds and music and dialogue that was coming out from even TV shows and movies if you just stopped watching it. So I started to kind of get into that audio world. What is this going to sound like? How are you going to create this atmosphere for your listeners? And that's something that I've really been trying to educate myself on. And then also, you know, you're writing these scripts, but you're really pulling these scripts from audio interviews you've done. So it's a lot of transcriptions. It's a lot of putting pieces of puzzle together and making these episodes and podcast series come to life. So I'm still learning, but that's been a huge education for me, is that whole process.
So you mentioned luck, and I've heard you say it a couple times that you got lucky. But, you know, the old saying is luck is just when opportunity meets preparation. So yes, it's lucky, and it's, you know, that maybe, you know, you were in the right room with the right person at the right time or whatever, but you still have product. So let's talk a little bit about how people can be prepared for when that moment hits. You know, how do you make sure you take advantage of an opportunity when it comes up, how to fully follow through, in addition to, you know, how to make sure you're ready for that next opportunity. You know, that is, you know, what's your next deal? What's your next deal? So how did you set yourself up to be able to take advantage of these opportunities?
Yeah, that's a great point, because early on in my career, Karen, I would get into some big rooms and I wasn't prepared. I would have an idea, but then they'd say, okay, well, where's the script, or where's the teleplay, or, you know, where's your lookbook or something like that. So as I matured in the business, I realized if you got in these rooms, you had to be ready to go to present something. So that's a very good point that you say that. So in each of the cases that you just laid out, I had pitches prepared, I had lookbooks prepared. I had basically, if they said the next day, we're ready to finance this, I was ready to go. And then on top of that, I had a project or two in mind if they said, and what else do you have? So I guess for our listeners or people that are just getting into the business, oftentimes we make the mistake of going out in front of people too early, where we're ready to maybe talk about an idea, but we're not ready to execute that idea. And so I would take the extra time that you need to execute it. And as you just pointed out, making sure that you have a few projects, even if they're not as far down the line, but ready to go, so that you have these people that, you know, can take you seriously.
Right, right. So, okay, well, let's just talk about then where you were in your life. You know, do you think marriage and fatherhood have made you be someone that's on top of, okay, this got to be done, this got to be done, this got to done, and I got to get the oil change and pick up some groceries on the way back? Like, do you find yourself more organized now that you're an official grown up with the family? Not that people aren't grown ups officially if they don't have the family units. Everybody, you know, in different ways. But do you think that has something to do with it?
I do. And I think I've kind of moved away because, again, let's also talk, Karen, about the age of your kids. You know, ours are 5 and 7, and so they need and deserve a lot of attention and love. You know, as the kids get older, they can start to do that. So I started as a writer, screenwriter, you know, many, many years ago. I found that I've had, until now, until this podcast, I had less time to kind of create. And I found myself more on the producing side doing deals. So it was easier for me when I was tired at night, let's say if you had a 9 to 5 job and you were working with your family, to kind of read and come up things that I could maybe buy and sell, as opposed to creating projects on my own. And so, and using the flexibility of nights, like we talked about, and weekends to find the time to do that. So I found myself, up until this podcast, more on the producer and business side, as opposed to earlier when I had no kids and I had no wife, being able to have the time to write and do all that stuff.
But you're even more focused, like you're more focused with less time, right? Like if you got all the time in the world, it's like, I'll get to it. But now it's like, nope. Thursday, I got to drive to do this. Friday is the orthodontist appointment. You know?
And Karen, and to that point, Karen, also the projects that I actually come across my desk. I mean, I'm much more selective now. You know, as one guy, one producer, I try to stay within the 3 to 5 project range. I mean, some people are doing as many as 20, 30, 40 when you're talking about these big production companies and studios and stuff like that. So I keep it very minimal. And then, like you said, I mean, I'm very selective with the projects that I kind of take on, and also with the people, to be honest. I mean, I've got a great team that I work with, people that, you know, as you know, sometimes when you're forced to work on a project, you're forced to work with people as well, or you choose to work on a project, and sometimes the people aren't the best in the world. And so having the ability to choose and work with the people that you love is great. So the team and the people I get to collaborate with now is just, it makes it worth getting up every day.
Well, okay, so I was going to segue somewhere else, but I'm going to segue here now. Let's talk about working with friends. You know, the first document I knew about your documentary, Living to Win, right? Is that
Living
what
is
is
winning.
it? Living to Win. Living is winning. Okay.
Living
See,
yeah.
There we go. And it was about your lifelong friend, and you know, that was a documentary. Then you've got Fight Night, which is based on based on a real story. Again, we're teasing Fight Night. We're gonna talk about Fight Night in a minute, right? But how was it producing something based on your friend's life when something that's so personal? And then how was it working with your friends? Because I think Linda worked on that, right?
Linda Burns.
Yeah, Linda Burns. Yeah, so it's how is that? You have kind of been fortunate where you've been kind of able to work with friends, but is that sometimes a little bit more challenging?
I found it not as challenging. I mean, I brought in Linda for one, her experience, and two, to kind of manage exactly what you just said. Drew was like a brother to me. And so I knew that I was going to have some emotional connection to the story and to the person that I was doing the documentary on. Linda could kind of be the eyes and ears kind of surrounding and looking at that. So that worked well, in my opinion. And then with some of the other things, listen, you're either a collaborator or you're not in my business. Now, sometimes you'll have people like Tarantino and the Coen brothers, and they're real visionaries. I'm not really a visionary. I'm not a guy that, like Dan Bush, that kind of has an overall vision of the way this stuff works. I got an idea about story and kind of what I want to do, but I really enjoy putting together the teams of people in different positions and being to collaborate and kind of bounce ideas and stuff. So that's kind of my strength, in my opinion, is I love putting together these teams and be able to listen to good ideas and then bring them to fruition.
Okay. So, all right. So I remember seeing we went to the premiere for Living is Winning, and then about how much time passed in between that and you starting working on Fight Night, or were you kind of doing them in tandem at all? Or
yeah, Fight Night came well before that, actually. So again, one of those things where Fight Night, the screenplay got optioned to Dallas Austin's company. I think it was 2004. And then some other small projects, but we were able to use kind of the success of that to be able to get some investors. Plus, obviously, it was just a great story. Each project kind of rolled and flowed into one another. And then after Living is Winning, there was kind of a little break where you're just doing, normal stuff within the business, just trying to find jobs and stuff. And then Universal kind of flowed into Follow Me, which flowed into iHeart, and now everything's just kind of rolling, which is great.
All right, so let's talk about Fight Night. What is the story about? How did you get it? What was your process to getting it to where it is now? And then how did that become a podcast?
Yeah.
Right?
So Fight Night is the story of the Muhammad Ali Jerry Quarry fight, which was the first fight for Muhammad Ali when he came back from being banned from boxing here in Atlanta, October 26, 1970. And it was also the story of a guy named Gordon Chicken Man Williams, who was a hustler, a big time and lottery man in Atlanta at that time, and an after party that he threw where when the party goers walked in, they were greeted by 7 masked gunmen with sawed-off shotguns that escorted them downstairs and robbed them of all their cash and jewelry. And kind of the collision between this huge event and this huge heist.
So how did you find that story? Because it was clearly before you were born, although I was a baby.
Yeah.
Right?
So my father and my mother were actually leaving on their honeymoon the morning that the article came out kind of talking about this story. And years later, when I was getting into screenwriting, my dad remembered this story and basically said, you really need to check this out. And so my parents and their love was kind of what brought this to my desk.
So, okay. So then you research it. How do we make it to where you own it and you are able now to produce a film off of it?
So you never really own it. You kind of option, which is kind of a lease, as people in the industry know. And I was able to option Chicken Man's Gordon's life story and write a screenplay. And then it went through several different companies before it got to Universal, Dallas, Austin, then another company in the middle of that, and then ultimately Universal and Will Packer. And so again, as you know, and you've heard these stories, it takes years. I mean, there's still no movie or no TV show yet. There's been a lot of deals. So I'm real excited about the partnership with iHeart because it's the first time where we actually get to tell the story in full and we get to distribute and produce, this wonderful story. So
how's the podcast working? Because, I'm one of those people who, everyone's like, oh, you listen to podcasts, and I don't listen to any podcasts, okay? And then most of the podcasts, if I turn it in, it's just people talking. So tell me how the narrative aspect of what you're doing with the podcast, is it already on, or are you producing episodes and then they come on? I should know this, right?
No, it's okay. Yeah, so we're producing the entire limited series. It's going to be 12 episodes. It's going to air this fall around the 50th anniversary of the event. And so we're actually in post-production right now. And you literally produce all of that stuff ahead of time, and then they will launch it and distribute it on a weekly basis. So it'll come out one a week for 12 weeks.
So are the scripts, this is me as a writer, are the scripts formatted the same for podcasts as they are for TV film?
Yeah, well, for me, yes. So we use Final Draft as to write the screenplays, but they are a little different in this sense. The process is you have all these interviews. We're using this transcription program where you can literally upload these interviews and then you see all the words come out with time codes. And it's kind of like putting pieces of a puzzle together within the script. So sometimes you're actually writing and creating the words, but that's more from my part. But mostly you're taking all these interviews and you're piecing them together in the way that you want to form the script. And then that script is important because that script will go to our editor and our sound designer so they can know the right time codes and where to put all of the different pieces of the interview together for the podcast.
So how much, are they directed also? Are they, do you have a cast? Is it a narrator or how is that?
So I guess, I don't know if you call me a host or a narrator or what, but I'm basically retelling the story of how I found out about the story and all of the different characters and stuff that I came across. And then once you come across these characters, then you have these interviews that bring them to life. We do have a director, Dan Bush, like I was telling you. And what Dan is really good is, again, the whole vision of what this story is going to be like. And more importantly, as you know, Terry as well, I've never done any real voiceover work or voice work, and it's a lot harder than you think. So if it's just you and me kicking back and having drinks in a bar, I can tell this like without even thinking. But when you get in front of a mic and you get into a studio, sometimes it's a little, you're just trying to find your voice and stuff like that. So Dan's been good at keeping me on track and making it as natural as possible so that you can just be able to tell the story to the audience. That's the way I really see this is, I'm going to be obviously have this podcast, but I would like it to be like I'm talking to a soccer mom in Iowa or a pastor in New Jersey or a, dock worker in New York, whoever it is. I'd like it, obviously, like I'm kind of just telling them the story. That's the way I envisioned it, at least.
Well, okay. And I told you the conversation will go anywhere. I was expecting to go one place, but yes, you want it to be able to have anyone around the country get it. But what you're doing about that Atlanta flavor, like you putting a little lemon pepper sauce on it, what are you doing to make sure it's ATL?
So that's a great point. One of the things we did is we partnered with a great historian, Dr. Maurice Hobson, who's a professor at Georgia State, and also wrote this book called The Legend of The Legend of Atlanta, I think, or The Legend of the Black Mecca, Politics and Race and Class. Forgive me for not knowing the title exactly. I don't have it. But he basically wrote this wonderful book that covered this 20-year period about the history of Atlanta. And he's just so knowledgeable about Atlanta itself. Plus, to be honest, all the people we're talking about are talking about Atlanta themselves. So J.D. Hudson was one of the first policemen in Atlanta. Chicken Man was this lottery and hustler in Atlanta. So you'll get the flavor. Don't worry.
All right. Need that, extra wet. What's up, ATL? Now, Dan, he works with like David Bruckner, right? And okay. See, back in the day, this is my old timey story. Dan, David, and Scott Poythress lived all together. I think this is before the Signal. And I used to work at the hair salon right next door. It was at the Hotel Roxy on Marietta. Anyway, so that's how long I've known them. That was back before I was a mom and everything too, working in a hair salon next to them. And they were just these three guys that had they were doing things or whatever. So it's really awesome to see where they've come from, and seeing that. Okay, we've got questions. If anyone wants to ask any questions, you can ask questions at any time and we'll try to fit them in some kind of way. Krupa is back there. She's making sure we get all our questions. So I told y'all my birthday's coming up. Y'all know I got to put my readers back on to see what it's saying.
Officially wish you a happy birthday week and month. And so we're all very excited, obviously, about that.
Thank you. Y'all were there for 40, but due to situations, what's the saying that everyone says, unforeseen circumstances or whatever that everyone's saying, it shall be a very tiny, tiny, tiny function of 6 people, so what made you decide to make this a podcast? And it says you want to make a film also, so we know that this was a film first.
And also, just to let you know, iHeart's model, Karen, they really, and I think very smartly, are using a lot of these podcasts first to find an audience, because obviously that's very important in anything you're doing, and then the model is to hopefully translate that to a film or television, series, a film or television series. But again, Dan was the one that really caught, I'd listened to a couple. I'd listened to Serial. I'd listened to S-Town. But now I've really started to listen to them more to try to, again, learn, how the best of the best are doing it. But Dan really thought, hey, you've got a way to really tell the story and use these archival interviews well. And it was really just pushing that. So it was lucky in that sense, too.
Okay. Now, you used to teach screenwriting, right? Did you teach it with the Atlanta Film Festival?
I taught at Image, Film, and Video, yes, for a few
right.
times. Yeah.
It was Image back in the day, and that's how you met your lovely wife.
My lovely wife, absolutely.
Look at this, making love connections here. You thought you were just taking classes and earning a check, and you met the love of your life. But what have you learned from being out there in the real world? Do you think that you wish you had talked about some other things about the real world in script writing, or just focus on script writing? Are there different things that you look at, maybe something that you wanted to teach differently now that you've been out in the world?
Well, I always thought that the writers, and again, you don't want to put anybody in a box, but kind of fell into two categories. A lot of people write from their heart and personal experience, and then a lot of people write from their head and just create and make up the stuff. I was much more of a head and creator kind of guy. So I never really used personal stories or getting into, personal events to inspire me to write stories. I was much more into making up, my own worlds or that stuff like that. But what's funny is I ended up falling into true stories and true crime, on several of my stuff. So Follow Me, my current one, which is about a female photographer that ends up hiring a private investigator to follow her and takes pictures, kind of a great film noir, and mysterious kind of film, was fun for me because I got to get back to the fiction side as a part of the nonfiction. So I would love to get back into writing again. I think that'd be great. But if I did, it would definitely be much more stuff off the top of my head, nothing from my personal life.
To which, let me look and see if there's any comments now from the home front, saying thank you. No, but it's funny because when you were talking earlier, it reminded me of something your mom told me about when you were starting off writing, and she was like, you just gotta stay up late, you gotta do what you gotta do and hang out. That's what I did. What are some of the things, because you've got kids, they're very, very young now, but in what ways do you do writing with them? Are you encouraging storytelling with them as well?
Yeah, it's funny. It's a constant battle with especially my son. I've been trying to get him into movies, watching Star Wars for the first time was incredible. What's interesting is he's always curious, Holland too, about what I'm working on. But of course, as you know, a lot of the stuff is so adult. So they are pressing me to try to work on some more family or kid-friendly stuff so that they can actually listen to it or watch it. So I've been kind of thinking about that. I have to say, Karen, that's a good point. I've been recently thinking about some more stuff that I could do that would be more kid and family friendly, because most of the stuff I work on is not.
I just, I talk about, my kid is 15 now, and you first met him when he was 4. Yeah. Oh, this was supposed to be my great story about why I was rooting for Jeff when he started dating my friend. So, I had a 4-year-old, and I didn't get out much. And I was supposed to go out one night, and me and Terry were going out, and then, the babysitter fell through, and it was just like, oh, okay, well, I can't go, too bad. And then Terry called me back, and she was like, no, Jeff said he'll watch him. I was like, what? No, Jeff said he'll watch him. Just forget this part. I was like, what? Marry this man, right? No, but so that just tells you the kind of guy Jeff is, looking out for people, and I always appreciate that. I say all this to say what? So, my kid wants to write. I mean, he's writing and, producing stuff. So I finally let him watch Pulp Fiction. I've been holding off forever because of that one scene that everybody knows. But when I watched it, I had him holding it. It wasn't even as bad as normal. So it's like I remember having to go through all of those things when he was young and like redo, not let him watch Lord of the Rings yet, but I'd react out. You ever thought about like writing some things that already exist in a family-friendly way?
That's possible. I hadn't thought about that. We definitely started reading Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe recently, and the kids are loving that. And I forget how much I love the book. Let me tell, first of all, Terry and I, my wife, so everybody knows, are having this constant battle because I definitely am one of the ones that want to push the TV shows and movies on the kids sooner than later. And she's like, let's, reserve their innocence and they don't need to be seeing all this stuff. But it comes from a tradition with my dad who did the same thing to me. Like, my mom, I think, was trying to hold me back on seeing some things. And my dad and I would watch The French Connection when I was like probably too young and some of these other movies. So I think I'm trying to pull from the stuff that my dad and I kind of bonded with my son as well. And so that's something that, I have to be conscious of not pushing them too far ahead with certain storylines and material and stuff, because again, they are kids, but you just want them to, you want to share
Right.
all these, you want to share these things with them. So.
Yes, and it's very difficult because the fun thing is they say the mom, well, generally general roles, when they show like moms are always the safety police and dads are like, no, don't let them run out. That's the only way to learn how not to get hit by a car is running into the street,
Yeah.
So that comes from a long line of dad traditions, and I let my kid watch Shoot to Kill. I think he was like 3 or 4. I was like, it's Tom Berger, it's Sidney Poitier, give me a break, and Kirstie Alley. Anywho, we have another question. Let's see.
Okay.
How long until your wife gets in on one of these projects?
Well, we know who that came.
Or your wife's friends. I don't know. It does take place in Atlanta.
So to answer that, Terry and I actually did a project together called Happy Hour, which was kind of a cooking show that we did for her. And I will say, a lot of people, especially in certain businesses and even creative, I think are concerned about doing a project, with your spouse. But Terry and I actually worked great on that together. We kind of separated it between creative and business. She did a lot and almost all of the writing, and obviously was in front of the camera. And I did, trying to put some of the funding and more of the team of producing and getting the David Bruckner actually helped us a little bit on that as well. I would love to do another project with my wife and friends. That sounds lovely. I will start thinking about that immediately.
Oh, I'm not going to hold you to it at all. But okay, so let's talk about some real stuff too, because throughout this whole time with quarantine and all of these things that are going on socially, there's been a lot of race discussions, a lot of racial issues, a lot of things. How have you all been dealing with this, talking to your kids? How have you, things in the news that are going on? How do you all deal with things like that?
Well, that's a great question. I think because I've been so slammed with this particular project. I've been, obviously I know what's going on. So there's not a ton of, Terry and I would say kind of separate. She's got some dear friends that she has a lot of these discussions with. I got a community group and some friends that I'm talking about this. So there's not as much of that with us all the time. Of course, there is a constant discussion. What I have found interesting, Karen, is that the podcast, because a lot of the characters in it dealt with a lot of these racial issues 40 and 50 years ago, I'm learning about some of the stuff that they went through and how we're still dealing with some of those same issues today. So it's a reminder of that things haven't changed as much as we want. As I told you, I've had this great historian that's educated me on a lot of the stuff in Atlanta and the history with that. So I've been more of a listener and learner over the past several months more than anything else. And I think, to be honest, I probably continue to need to go in that direction.
So does any of that, oh, wait a minute, you said, right from your heart or where it's going, or but do you think some of that might affect projects that you might write down the line?
Well, I think it's affecting the current one, not as much of what I'm inserting myself, but just being conscious of what we need to focus on and some topics that we need to basically highlight. So I would say in that sense, even though I'm not writing from it personally, I'm making sure that we focus on it because personally I'm involved in the project.
So are you looking to get back into teaching at all, or is that a thing of, we're all kind of learning different things that we need to do, and teaching online is the wave of the present and future, it seems.
I would say right now, teaching is probably much farther down the line. I definitely have a couple of students that I'm mentoring, one in particular who's wonderful and working on a project with her. So I would say it's more one-on-one than maybe in a group setting. I'm enjoying the mentoring process right now, which is great.
Yeah, it's important to mentor. And I think a lot of times when you get people, and I'll say collectively, we're kind of colleagues in the same, social space. where there's those of us we're still a little like, well, I'm not a star. I'm not, like we work with the people that have all the pull and money and opportunities. So a lot of times I find that people in our circles kind of feel like, well, I don't really, I don't really know. I'm still trying to find out myself. But it's important to know what value you already bring, or you wouldn't be in this type of situation.
And I've actually got a little bit of both. Linda connected me with a big time producer that's helping me with Follow Me, because there's a lot, as you know, when you're trying to raise financing for a film, that is very complicated and you got to have a lot of experience. I've done some of it, but I brought somebody in that was really at a high level. So even at my age, almost 50 as well, I've got somebody that's mentoring me. So I definitely feel the need and the want to do that with some young people. Now, again, you don't want to do too many because you want to make sure that you can focus. But I've got a couple people now that are great and so talented, and I think are, the wave of the future in our business. And so it's helpful to guide them without a doubt.
So let's talk about financing, because if anything independent filmmakers want to know about is financing. So take us through your process because you've had 3 separate projects that are very different, but one fed into the other, and feeding into the other, definitely that's financing, that support. What was it like in the beginning? What were the things you wish you knew? How are you approaching financing now? How are the things different? If you didn't have Universal behind you or something like that, what would you have done? Those type of things.
I think one of the things you mentioned earlier is very important, just being really prepared when you're talking to potential financiers and really having a game plan from start to finish of what you want to accomplish. There's the content, which is the story, but there's also the marketing and distribution and other sides. And again, I'm not an expert on all of that, but at the very least, I think I communicate what the plan is well. So I would advise the people that are getting into that to really know from start to finish, what it is you want to do. Also getting the right price. It's weird. A lot of people do not like raising funds. I love it, Karen. I love getting into the room and trying to, convey the vision that we're trying to do and to be able to convince somebody to give you money. I just, for some reason, I really love it. So you got to find somebody like me, or at least is really good at it, to do that. Because a lot of writers or directors or whatever, they shouldn't be involved in that aspect of it. They need to partner with people that know how to do that side of it. I'm still learning how to network and getting the people that actually have, that kind of money, getting in front of them. I mean, it's really tough. So you just got to constantly be networking and talking to the right executives at companies and just putting yourself out there, to be honest.
So you mentioned that having a lookbook is important. What are 2 or 3 of the items that everyone should gather before they're talking to someone?
So 1-page description, which is just basically like kind of a title, a log line, which is a short sentence, and then a brief synopsis, I think is vital and something that everybody throughout our industry knows and recognizes. I think visually, it's great these days to have a lookbook and maybe a sizzle reel, so something that they can play, in under 3 minutes, and then also a book that you can kind of look at visually to see potential actors and actresses, to see this thing come to light. And then a very brief kind of financial plan as well, 1 or 2 pages that outlines, what you need financially, how you're going to get your investors' money back. You have those 3 things, Karen. I think you're going to stand out from a lot of people, and really, really tight. I'm talking well prepared, no mistakes, everything coming to life very clearly in what you're trying to, portray in your film or TV show or podcast or whatever it is.
Well, you have someone that's helped you with you right now. Do you want to introduce anyone real quick, a friend that helped you with your financial stuff early, or no? Or
I mean, let me just say that I partnered with a great CFO, Courtney DeFries, who has the history with banking and finance and has been vital, especially with these past few projects. So having somebody like that is great. Because again, don't forget, there's so many different things you got to do throughout these projects, and you got to have a team and you got to have professionals. So I have a great team of professionals. And by professionals, I mean people that you don't have to constantly look over what they're doing, that knows that there's deadlines and things that you got to accomplish, and are willing to support you in getting the job done. I mean, that's great.
So what are some of the red flags though? Because a lot of times I'm the queen of cutting folks off like that, like 2 times and you're out for me. But I see lots of people kind of, oh, whatever, my friend, or this. What are red flags that you like? If these things happen more than once, you need to find somebody else. And how do you make that decision to say they gotta go?
Well, it's really just one red flag, and that's are they willing to do the work and put in the time just like you are? I mean, you'll know if you get in somebody and you see you're doing all of the work that it's really not a partnership. So it's very easy to me very quickly. You know, we all have assignments. Do we do them? Do we hold each other accountable? Are we constantly lifting each other up to make sure that we're getting the job done? Are we supporting each other when we get stressed or nervous? I mean, I can fairly easily tell, you know, from quick meetings, because you got a lot of people, you know, Karen, in our business that are just throwing a lot of BS. Yeah, exactly. And so you can weed those out, people, you know, very quickly. I'll give you another example. I got a guy in town, Jason Wynn, who is a filmmaker, director, producer. And Jason, I mean, when he and I first started talking, he was just no nonsense and a machine. You gave him an assignment and he came back and did it. You needed something that you needed to bounce off an idea, he came back and did it. And that's why we're still working together and trying to work on projects. So, you know, we got a few people in town that we know. You know, Michael Sokol, I think you've worked with, is another example.
We go back 20 years, me and
Exactly.
Sokol, yeah.
Michael's a great example of somebody that just gets the job done. And so you just, I mean, listen, it's pro or no for me. You're either a professional or you're not. And so,
right.
Yeah.
And again, that does come a little bit with age,
Yeah.
and a little bit with knowing that, you know, your time is just not there to waste anymore. You know, when it's just you, or when it's just when you're younger and you're still in this place of someone's doing me a favor. I don't want to be too, you know, I don't want to be too forceful or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, you've been in the game a little bit. You also have other projects up under your belt now, that it's easier, I think, to be able to identify those things. Because some people can't. For you, it's very simple and say it was one thing, but for other people, you can't. Some people can't really identify those things as specifically when they're starting out.
And personality too, Karen. I mean, you know, a lot of people will butt heads and stuff, but sometimes that's a good thing. You know, I mean, there's a lot of people in town that are professionals. Maybe you don't mess with them, your personality exactly the way you want, but sometimes you got to let just people be who they are, especially if they're good workers and stuff. So, you know, you may have a different style or whatever it is, but you've got to learn how to mesh those styles within a project. And so, you know, you just got to be really open and understanding to, you know, what people bring to the table, and trust that they're going to do their job. But again, like you said, I mean, just finding, I'm very, I mean, you know, I won't use the word lucky, but blessed that I've got some great professionals and personalities that I love to work with, you know, and that's been fun.
Well, you got to be a magnet. You got to be the right magnet to attract the right things to you. And I think the more specific in who you are as a person and what you stand for, the more you will attract that. You know what I mean? You know, now, are there any films or directors that you disliked at first, but then you grew into liking down the line?
Not really. I mean, if I didn't like somebody, I just didn't work with them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had that where, well, you know, I have a very strong personality, so there are people I've rubbed the wrong way off the bat, right? So, you know, I get that. But oh, this is another question. Have you ever raised funds for a film that wasn't, or a project that wasn't your own?
I think I've tried to do that on a couple of occasions. In fact, I'm in the middle of one now, helping a guy out. Really, really great story, actually. But I've never been really hired or had success doing that yet. Probably just because, my project has been on the forefront. So I haven't done that yet, but I would be interested in doing something like that, especially if it's a great project.
Do you think that's a way, like, if you see Jeff 10 years from now, what do you think? I mean, everything, it depends on what opportunities come your way, and who knows. But do you see yourself going into that direction?
I definitely do, Karen. I love producing. I love raising funds, and hopefully,
Noted.
yeah, especially if there's some success that starts to come my way, I think that will afford the opportunity to be able to do that for other people's projects. But I will say this, I would have to love your project. I mean, I wouldn't be the guy that would just raise money to make money. I mean, I definitely really want to be behind kind of what I'm doing, even if, I'm not necessarily working on it full time. I would want to, really support that project.
Okay. Now we're coming to the end. See, it blew by. Look at that.
Great.
We're already at 7:51. Look at that.
Good.
So if you guys have any more questions, please send them in now, because we're gonna be closing up shop soon. We're not gonna end early just because I got a weekend to party for at my house. Look at my house now, but
Let me say one real thing quickly in closing, because you were talking about my mom. So mom started as a writer and a documentarian herself. So dad was kind of the one that introduced me to the love of movies, and mom really introduced me to the process and the hard work that it took to do so. So when I was doing some rewrites on Fight Night, she basically was helping me with that process. And I remember cursing at her and scrum, like I mean, I should never talk to my mother this way, but it was kind of like she understood, just like screaming her, because I didn't want to, change the words or change anything, but she really helped me to understand how important the rewriting was done. And we actually ended up working great together, because she just realized I was acting like a crazy person. But that's important for everybody to understand. That's on the writing side, is the rewriting and the rewriting and the rewriting is so important. And it's really where all the work comes in. So be ready to take notes. Be ready for people to give you good, critical things to improve on. Constructive criticism. That's what I was trying to say, because that's going to be important.
And I definitely want to, because this will probably be our last thing, but I do want to give a shout out to your mom and dad, who I love dearly. And I used to do a lot of work with women in film and everything, and got to know different people. And I met your mom, I guess I don't know if I met her before you guys got married, or I can't remember. But then when I found out that she was so active in women in film, like back in the day, and motherhood kind of got
the early ones. Yeah, mom was one of the early ones in women in film. She's a trailblazer in that sense.
Yeah, so definitely want to give a shout out to her for just being there. Women in film, just a shout out for Women in Film Atlanta. There are chapters all over the world of women in film, and Los Angeles is the oldest chapter, but Atlanta is the second oldest chapter. And it's really important to know we're kind of coming full circle with the film industry here in Atlanta. I'm looking forward to more homegrown projects, really taking the forefront. Definitely Donald Glover with Atlanta being Atlanta and So Atlanta has really been able to push us further into what are the authentic Atlanta stories, as opposed to just being a place that people come to shoot their projects that stand in for New York or wherever. So I so look forward to seeing everything that happens. I'm so happy and so proud of everything that you're doing, Jeff, and so excited for you. Is there anything else you want to say before we head out?
No, I really appreciate it. Just remember, everybody, to look for the Fight Night podcast with iHeartRadio this fall. It'll actually come out right around the 50th anniversary, October 26th. October 26th, yeah. There'll be some press, so we'll be able to do it. And I just really enjoyed, we don't get to do this just one-on-one as much, so I really enjoyed talking to you.
Right.
And hopefully we got to give the listeners, some good insights into our business. So.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Hold tight as we finish here. Again, we're here every Thursday night. Jeff is the first interview of our creative conference attendees, panelists. So whereas before we had filmmakers that had specific films in the festival, now we're talking to people who are in the industry, here in the area and have a wealth of information. So please stay tuned for every week, Thursday night at 7 o'clock. And, thank you so much, Jeff, for joining us. Do you have an Instagram or any social media handles that you'd like to promote?
I do, and my social media friend Jen Joyner, I'll give a shout out to her, who's wonderful. I just don't have them offhand, so I'll figure out a way where we can get them to everybody at some point, and I'll do better. Sorry, Jen.
Okay. Well, my Instagram is Karen Ceesay, and I'm sure wherever you came to this email or this video, you can find how my name is spelled. But I'd love it. On Saturday, you just send me a couple birthday shout outs. I was supposed to be having a big old party, but I can't. I know it's about me because, again, I'm a Leo. I'm narcissistic. I'll take that. I'm taking this airtime. But I just want to thank everyone for coming in today, watching our interview. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Krupa, Justice, Kayvon with the Atlanta Film Festival, who are handling everything behind the scenes. So big up to them. Thank you again. Every Thursday night, we're here, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook Live. Follow everybody at Atlanta Film Festival and Atlanta Film Society. And we will see you next week.